The Stranded Whale by Jane Yolen, September 1971. We were walking home from school, hurrying along the top of the dunes because Ma always hates when we're late for supper. Martin had a basketball practice. Josh had stayed after school for extra help in math. Long division is hard, he says. I say it's easy. I needed to use the encyclopedia for a project about our state. The late bus had already gone, so we had to walk, but since there were 3 of us, it wasn't too bad. Even hurrying, Josh took time to joke about how short I am. He thinks because he's a minute older than me, he can talk that way. We came to the big bend where you can see across the inlet to the roof of our house and our boat beyond, meaning that Dad was already heading home from fishing. The tide was going out, so he'd be hurrying too. The boys began running around me in circles, sing-songing my name, Sally, Sally, in the alley. So I was the only one looking forward and the first to see it. Ahead on the beach was this big gray thing, humped up on the drying sand. This being Maine, the beach is full of boulders, but that was no rock. Look, I cried, pointing. Both the boys turned at once, seeing what I saw. A stranded whale lying on its side with the outgoing tide too far behind it, so it couldn't get back to the water on its own. Running, slipping down the dune, I stripped off my shoes, book bag, sweater, leaving the bag and shoes on the sand. As I ran toward the ocean, it must have looked like I was chasing the water, which was fast heading out to the east. I ran past beach starfish, past little transparent jellyfish breathing in and out on the sand, past busy little crabs going from tide pool to tide pool. When I got to the water at last, I plunged the sweater in till it was completely soaked. The water was a shock. So cold. I could smell the brine. I ran to the whale. It stank of fear and deep water. I wrung the sweater out on the whale's side, then placed the wet bulk under its eye. The boys chased off the whale. The boys chased off to the ocean as well, dipped their sweaters in, ran back to place them on the whale's tail, on its fins. The whale's eye, the size of a bicycle tire, turned towards us. It looked like it was weeping. We had a whole ocean of water, but I was afraid that it wouldn't be enough. We need help, I said. Josh raced off to an emergency phone halfway along the beach, maybe half a mile. The policeman who answered said he'll call the Coast Guard, though it took them 20 minutes to get to us. So we kept wetting that whale 1 sweater, 2 sweaters at a time. Help arrived in a big blue camper bus with swirls and slogans painted along its side, followed by 3 pickup trucks. The moon was just starting to climb over the horizon. 9 men and a woman named Eve leaped out of the bus and trucks like clowns from the circus. Good job, kids, one man called, though he hadn't done all that much. Then the men rocked and pushed the whale back and forth toward the outgoing tide. Martin and Josh tried to help. Eve shook her head and said to me, "That's Leviathan, the great whale in the Bible. They won't be moving it very far." She was right. They hardly moved it an inch, and by the time they quit rocking, the ocean was even further away, and the whale even more tired than the men. Josh came back and stood by me. He had tears in his eyes. Not me. I was too mad to cry, mad at the unforgiving ocean, rushing away from the shore, mad at our short arms and the whale's long body, mad that we didn't have a boat, a winch, long ropes to pull it in the sea, mad at everything. The grown-ups hauled more water in big steel buckets from the Coast Guard truck and pots and pans from the camper. None of it was enough. Eve drove the camper into town and came back with sandwiches and soda. A bunch more cars followed after her, all come to help, or so they said. Everyone ate and drank like it was a party, standing or squatting right next to the whale's flukes or tail, all the while soaking it with water. I had a sip of Josh's pop, then went back to talk to the whale, into the eye like it was an ear, telling the whale how it was beautiful and strong, and how we would miss it, whatever happened next. At last, though, just as the sun was setting, the whale shut its great eye. It gave out a huge sigh like wind off the ocean. The sigh smelled like seaweed, like lobsters in Dad's traps, like gutted fish on the pier, and then it was gone, just like that. I wondered how that whale, so big when it was alive, could suddenly seem so much smaller now that it was dead. Didn't make any sense, but there it was. I held Josh's hand all the way home, or maybe he held mine. Martin trotted ahead of us to let Ma know we were coming, why we were late. Ma was mad because supper had gone stone cold. So mad she was crying and couldn't catch her breath. Papa could have whooped us for staying out so late, but he didn't. Just put his arms around us saying, "It's all right, kids, it's all right." His clothes were damp from being out all day in his boat, and he smelled like the sea. Just then the Coast Guard man came by. He gave Josh, Martin, and me each a brown medal with a picture of a whale on each side, ocean waves on the other. "You never covered the blowhole," he said, as if he thought it the highest praise. "But why would we have done that? Last year Grandpa died trying to catch his breath, and suddenly I remembered him telling me once that a whale's just a man, writ large. I sure wouldn't have covered Grandpa's nose, his blowhole, he used to call it, as a joke. So the whale died, and we were heroes. Yet somehow I was still mad. I put my medal in the drawer and never took it out again. I'd have given that old medal back in a Portland instant just to see old Leviathan alive again, swimming joyously out to sea, spouting through its blowhole, tail slapping against the water, black eyes shining. I'd give that medal back for good if I could see it one time heading out to the deep water, lifting its tail and diving deep and free.